Good morning and welcome into a Tuesday edition, a post-national championship edition of Mic'd Up here on Pittsburgh Sports Live and Pittsburgh Sports Now. I'm Mike Osti, and I am joined as always by my fellow Mike Vukovican. And we will, of course, talk about the national championship, which I will say right away, my co-host here had right on our last morning show. In fact, even the whole way it went along with the size and Baylor's in the weight room, and that led into a national title, the first ever for the men's program, and the Big 12 got one. And we'll also talk how the Pirates are doing recently and a trade in the NFL. No, it doesn't involve the Steelers, but rumors that it was going to involve the Steelers the past few weeks. And if we would have done this, if we were the Steelers, Sam Darnold being traded from the Jets to the Carolina Panthers to get some actual semblance of a legit shot at an NFL career. I don't think he's really had it in New York. Again, Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services, 412-849-5894 to hit up Doug Martin for all your lawn care needs. And Mike, before we get to the title game, and I give you your due there with the switch pick and being correct, because I stuck with Gonzaga and they didn't win, we'll talk Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold traded from the Jets to the Panthers, and right away, I thought, okay, maybe this is something the Steelers should have done, late round pick for this year. But then we hear reports of other picks, second, fourth, being involved as well, and involving beyond just this year's draft. It does appear that it was a decent haul, more than what other players have gone for. He's a former first-round pick, so that might have been the grade. There might be talent that is still there that some clearly still believe in. I do believe in Sam Darnold still, and we've detailed before that no receivers, no line, and a coach that badmouthed them. The situation really wasn't working, and you need that situation to work to have success as a quarterback. What are your thoughts? And is this a trade that the Steelers should have done based on the price tag? This is a legit quarterback, but hasn't yet proven himself.
I would have done it. A second, a fourth, and a sixth.
Right.
This year, you're only going to give up one pick.
Yeah,
The other
this
two
year
picks,
just the sixth, right?
yeah, next year is where the picks would come in, and you're assuming that depending on what else happens, that the Steelers might pick up some picks next year
Right.
with compensation.
There you go. Yep.
But they wouldn't pick up a second. But you have to take it. You have to consider that if you're going to be getting a quarterback that you're hoping is going to be your quarterback for the next X amount of years, and he's what you think he is, a second round pick isn't that big of a haul.
No.
It seems on the surface. I know draft picks are valued in the NFL, but a second round pick for him in the fourth and the sixth, I don't really look at those too much. I know the fourth could be valuable, but they're gonna, you could acquire those picks somehow. The second is what it was, and I guess the Steelers just didn't place that much value on him, or
I guess.
or they have a plan of where they're going to acquire their next quarterback of the future. Recent mock drafts, including our Nick on Steelers Now.
Yeah, Nick Farabaugh.
Yeah, changes all the time, but a lot of people believe the Steelers could get that their quarterback in the second round. So we'll see. Kellen Mond's, I know a guy from Texas A&M is being brought up a lot. We'll see. I assume Colbert and the Mike Tomlin realized they need a quarterback, and I'm sure internally they have a plan as to how they're going to acquire it. And obviously, it wasn't getting Sam Darnold.
Yeah, you would imagine they have a plan, and some are mocking the Steelers to quarterbacks in the second or beyond rounds. First round just not going to happen with the legit QBs going prior to when the Steelers would pick at 24 right now, unless they somehow trade up, which has happened with Devin Bush and has happened more recently than ever prior before. And I'm sure they have a plan, but not to make it boring here on a talk show, on a debate show, I agree with you. I would have done it too, because again, you're only giving up the sixth this year. Yes, the second and fourth are there. If it was just a late round pick overall, then everybody, I'm sure, would say they should have done it and they're idiots. But second and fourth being involved does make it more of a haul, and that could kind of combine for first round value if he would become something, or even second round value. However, you mentioned it. You could get compensatory picks to kind of replace some of those picks. Certainly a late round pick, like a fourth next year. It wouldn't replace a second, but I had always said I wouldn't do a first round pick because of their needs and they want to win one more year with Ben there, but I would have done a second and beyond. And that's still kind of what this is, because that's the pick you can't get back. And you mentioned the Steelers maybe have a plan to bring in a quarterback in the second round. Some are mocking them to a QB in the second round. In my eyes, if that's your plan, then that's more reason why I would have done this trade. Because if you're valuing whoever you're going to draft as a second round pick and Sam Darnold's value is second round, I'd rather have Sam Darnold a few years under his belt, has already had some games where he's played well, despite a horrible situation. So he's overcome adversity a little bit. He has the talent. He did it in college. He has connection with some people there, as we mentioned before, in Juju. I would have done it if that's the value. And I think that he's still very, very young. He still has so much more left. I don't know if there's anybody else in the draft that I personally love that would match Sam Darnold's value or where he was pegged a few years ago. So I would have done it. They didn't. I would imagine, though, the way the Steelers would get really criticized for this is if they don't do anything in the draft, or they just pluck somebody in the fourth or fifth round just to get a quarterback, but it's not legit. Because they brought in Haskins, low risk, high reward. They didn't have to give up pretty much anything. He's a former first round value, but he's been a head case, so maybe they'll get something there. Mason, we've seen what we get there. And obviously Ben with his age, and Dobbs is not a legit quarterback either as a starter. So that's the current depth chart. And that if they draft somebody else, okay. If not, then again, I would have brought in Sam Darnold, but it was probably never going to happen.
Yeah, well, with the way the draft is going now, with the Jets trading him, we could mark off the first two picks in the draft with
Williams
and Zach Wilson going to the Jets. So now the draft starts at number 3 with the 49ers. And Kyle Shanahan, they traded up to get that pick. So obviously they're picking a quarterback as well. It's just a matter of which one now. Do they pick the guy, he's escaping my head now, the guy out of Alabama.
Mac Jones.
Yeah, Mac Jones. Is it going to be
which I don't love? A lot of people are falling in love with him, but when's the last time an Alabama quarterback has legit done it in the NFL since Joe Namath?
Yeah, exactly. Trey Lance. Those are who the Steelers, and the other guy that is being tossed around as a possible guy with the Steelers in the second round, and I'm not a fan of his, is the guy out of Florida, Trask. I don't, I'm not a fan of his, but I haven't watched as much tape, I guess, as the Steelers would. But they're going to get a quarterback somewhere. It's just a matter of when. And wouldn't be surprised if I'm picking my fantasy team next year when we get our drafts going in August. What the speed that Matt Rule's collecting down in Carolina.
Yeah.
Caffrey.
If he's healthy. Yep.
Yeah. I don't think that's a bad, Darnold wouldn't be a bad pick for a fantasy team down there with the weapons he's finally going to be surrounded by.
Yeah. I think he's finally in a decent situation, not perfect, but much better than what he was in. And just for a little aside, this potentially puts Will Greer's career in flux, the WVU product, who was trying to have some semblance of an NFL career and was pegged to be a legit NFL quarterback even when in college. Moving right along, though, Mike, you were right. Baylor won. Now you didn't have Baylor initially in your bracket, but you switched to Baylor based on what you saw, and it was correct, especially with UCLA giving that example and that blueprint. It almost seemed like they read the script. They had one guy with size that could bang. Baylor had an entire team, and as Charles Barkley said, they found the weight room. So they were just bigger. Gonzaga couldn't deal with them, and they really get bulldozed over the whole way through. It's kind of fortunate the game was late because nobody missed anything that slept through it. And I'd imagine the ratings were really, really poor. Anybody who turned it on probably turned it off when there was a 16-point deficit and it was already 10 p.m. on the East Coast. Gonzaga, another attempt at a national title that fails. They're runner-up again. This time they don't get that undefeated season. Indiana State with Larry Bird went all the way to the tournament, losing to Magic Johnson 79. That's the last time a team went all the way through and lost in that game. Granted, there's been other teams to go around the tournament to get in the tournament undefeated and then lose. And Baylor wins their first ever national title on the men's side. They've won one in the past as a women's program. Thoughts on Baylor's win and that program, and if they can keep it up, or that was an aberration? And then Gonzaga, does this diminish the year at all? Are they going to be back? And what the hell happened?
Well, I was I was surprised. I thought Baylor was going to, after seeing them the way they've played the last couple of games, I just didn't believe Gonzaga could hold up defensively. But I was surprised at how well Baylor. I know Baylor's a good defensive team, and they've showed it all year. But Gonzaga was a team that was scoring in the high 80s all year,
Yeah,
and
right.
they just completely shut them down. It didn't hurt the fact that Jalen Suggs got in foul trouble and had to sit for 3/4 of the first half, which definitely impacted the game. But
Yeah, he tried to pick it up late, but it was too late.
yeah, but Baylor also dealt with a lot of foul trouble with their big guys throughout the game. But the
Right.
difference is they had the depth to replace that. They could put
Right.
they could sit a couple guys down, and they had guys on the bench. You can't sit Jalen Suggs in a game like that and
No.
expect any sort of semblance of somebody replicating what he's going to do. So, but Baylor or Gonzaga just could not guard physically. They were not quick enough, and they were not strong enough to guard Baylor. Scott Drew,
Mm-hmm.
the roster, you've seen it more than I have this year with Big 12 basketball.
Right.
The roster that he's assembled down there is Davion Mitchell. That guy is an NBA point guard.
They said on the broadcast that most teams want to have one point guard. He has three.
Right, exactly. And they were just hitting their threes. They have five guys on their roster that can consistently hit threes. They have big guys, and they're just mean and physical down low.
Yeah.
You got to wear your big boy pants when you're playing against Baylor. And
do.
Gonzaga just didn't look, I hate to say it because they've played well all year, but they just didn't look, even if they would have played their best game, I don't think they were beating Baylor last night.
No,
Baylor's just a better team, and I think that was proven.
I think that's what was said even on the broadcast too, that as great as Gonzaga is, they all said it, this game is evident. They probably wouldn't have beat Baylor. If they would have played 4 times in a row, Baylor would have won all 4 of those games based on what we saw, what we've been aware of throughout this tournament. And honestly, this almost is unfortunate. Everyone's focusing on Gonzaga's attempt at an undefeated season falling short. People forget, and they did say it last night finally, if it wasn't for a 3-week break because of COVID without even practicing, Baylor was undefeated at that point. Yeah, you wonder what if they came out sleeping through that game right after the COVID break against Kansas, who wasn't that great this year. You have to wonder if Baylor would have made a crack at an undefeated season if it wasn't for that break, because that's rough on any team.
But yeah, I'd probably say no to that. Just
it's hard to do.
Just for the fact of we've talked about over the last few weeks since we started the show,
right?
How deep the Big 12 is. It's not like Gonzaga where you play your handful of non-conference games and you pretty much aren't tested again until March.
Yeah,
Baylor every night in the Big 12, even the bottom feeders of the Big 12,
right,
are going to give you a game. They might not beat you, but the middle and the upper half of the Big 12, you have to have your game almost every night, and so it's just too difficult now. But I just. As far as if they played 4 times, I would have liked to seen, and I still don't think the result. I think the result would have been closer than a 16-point game in 19-point, whatever the halftime score was, a 10-point at
right.
Right. 19
they got 16 at one point, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I got up to 19. I'd have liked to seen if Jalen Suggs, who's might be the number 1 pick, either him or Cunningham in the NBA draft this year. I'd have liked to seen if he was in there. Because obviously he's a difference maker.
Sure.
I just don't think the score would have been as lopsided as it was if he wasn't in foul trouble. But that's part of the game.
I think that was part of Baylor's strategy too. It clearly looked like their strategy was, we're going to be real physical. We're basically going to play football on a basketball court, and we are going to try to get to that guy. And if we can get him to sit down for even 5 minutes, we're going to have to gun it during that period of time, hold a lead, and then we'll be good. And it's almost the blueprint. So that's what happened. And I do think it was fitting in a way that the Big 12 got a championship out of this season, because the Big 12 was by far, for me, the best conference in college basketball this year. The Big 10 could argue, but I think the Big 12, as you mentioned, was way deeper. Even non-tournament teams in the Big 12 were good and were beating other teams and were competitive. It is interesting, too. The two closest games Gonzaga played all year, with obviously this loss, and then the closest game they had in the regular season, only a 5-point win over WU, both against Big 12 teams. And also what was mentioned on the broadcast, that as great as Gonzaga is, and this is a reason maybe why mid-major teams have advanced to the Final Four. We've seen Butler be a runner-up to Duke for national title. We've seen VCU. We've seen George Mason, Loyola Chicago, and clearly now Gonzaga doing it yet again, the second time now in recent memory. There is something to be said, though, for major conference teams and how they're tested in these tougher conferences, that, yes, you get through a tournament and you deserve it, but these games were really clumped together. They were 2 games and 3 nights. There were no days off. They hardly could take a break, even more than most tournaments. And that's just another weekend in the Big 12. The entire year in the Big 12, they're playing 2 and 3 nights. They're Baylor with travel and going to the East Coast for some teams. They've dealt with it all year. Gonzaga didn't really have to leave the West Coast for 4 months. The schedule's tougher than usual, but it's not still like a major conference schedule, and they don't clump the games. Those teams aren't as battle tested with the way their schedules are formatted, and that can screw you in the national title game when you aren't getting that much off from the Final Four and from those games close to that title game. That could be a thing too, that maybe they need to clump the schedule if they really want to do it, which will be hard against that competition in that conference.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And the other thing is, as it always does in any sport, you know, we can come up with, you know, this reason. Yeah. But the bottom line is, you look at Baylor's roster, and, you know, I know Drew Timme and Corey Kispert and Jalen Suggs. They got all the talk. I look at Baylor's roster and I see 5 guys that can play in the NBA.
Yeah.
And when you have 5 NBA guys, at least 5 NBA guys, because I have no idea what, you know, young players he might have on that roster, but you got 5 guys in your rotation that can play in the league. You know, I like
when you have that kind of size, you can.
Yeah, I like that. I like my
shot, or you can shot block.
Right. He got a lot of. He won the forward of the year in college basketball. He just was not. He got it, and I hate. I don't. This word's a little too strong, but I don't know what other one to use. He got exposed a little bit as far as he could not hang physically. His build. He was picked the forward of the year in college basketball. When he had to guard guys with the size and skill level of what he had to do, what he was asked to do last night, he just wasn't able to do it. And he's still a good college player, a really good college player. But I think that might tell you a little bit too about, you know, maybe his NBA future, as far as some guys are really good college players.
Right.
You got to go against the men in the NBA and those guys that you're going to ask to guard. That was a little test last night, a little preview of what he's going to be dealing with in the league. And it wasn't a real good showing.
No, it was not. And Baylor's a deserving champion again, the first ever for the men's program. They won it before as a women's program.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Winning that first championship for a program. I get tired in college football and other things where you see the same team winning championships. It just kind of gets boring. It's nice for their fan base, but it was good to see two new teams in the championship, and a team like Baylor. And Scott Drew, for everything I know about him, appears to be a really good guy, and it's good for his program. Hopefully they can keep that going.
Yeah, and honestly, you have 3 of the Final 4 teams had never won a national title. Houston, of course, had 5 slam-a-jam and got close, but they didn't actually win, one of the greatest upsets ever. UCLA obviously has had a slew of titles, but would have been their first since 95. Baylor gets their first. Gonzaga had never won, granted, a runner-up again, and then Houston. So that was cool. You get a lot of new teams to cite UCLA, even though they were an 11 seed. A wacky, wild tournament. At least we had it this year after not having it last year. And I think they got the award, so I can't say underrated, but to the casual fan, I wonder if they were aware of what Baylor's building, because they could be good for years to come, especially with some other teams like Kansas and Texas being down. Big 12 still going to be good next year. Gonzaga will be back, but they got all the accolades from the Pacific Northwest, which is weird. And Baylor kind of under the radar as that little brother, the second best team all year, and they end up with the title. So good for them. Mike, as we close things up here, Mic'd Up, presented by Martin Lawn Services, of course, here. Mic'd Up here on this Tuesday morning. Thoughts on the Pirates to this point? It's been 3 straight losses. Key Brian Hayes is out, but not a long-term thing. It looks like to me the bullpen is being asked to do way too much. They're having to come in way too early in games. The starter's only going through 4 or so, like Brubaker last night, despite pitching okay with 1 run off 3 hits. The offense not doing enough. Mitch Keller has been sucking, obviously. They make a little minor trade for another Keller. You have Ryan Reynolds, who was a big key this year. I put it as a key to the season on my show. He's been fine. Moran's been fine. Evans has been fine, but the offense overall has not been fine, and now they're losing.
Yeah, the way I'm going to be looking at things, Mike, and we're going to handle this whenever we talk about the Pirates here. I'm going to be looking at individual.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm going to be looking at individual things and things for the future because we know, we're going to say it. We're going to say it 10,000 times, but it's not about this year, and they got to find things for the future.
Right.
A couple of things that I saw. JT Brubaker looked okay. He looked like he could pitch. I think he showed that a little bit last year. He wasn't helped out in the whatever it was, the 3rd inning. Sloppy defense. Phillip Evans has to be able to. If Key Brian Hayes is there, that's a double play that they turn. He's out of the inning. He doesn't give up a run.
Right.
He's slow to turn it. And then Adam Frazier had no range on that the ball by De Leon, the pitcher. 8 out of 10 second baseman in baseball knock that down or field it and throw it out. Adam Frazier just didn't have the range to do that. So defense, it's not credited as an error in the box score, but bad defense. But the most encouraging thing for me last night was the Luis Ovadio, their Rule 5 guy. They traded for him from the Mets. And this guy used to be a top 150 prospect in baseball. He had an arm injury. He's only 21 years old, but he's 6'4", 235. So the Pirates have to keep him on the roster all year. And
he can play for Baylor.
Places. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he could have been the small forward for Baylor last night. But the guy got an arm. Last night he pitched 2 innings. He struck out 4 guys, struck out the side. He did give up a home run. But that's a guy that he has starter written all over him. They're going to do whatever they can because this year doesn't mean anything. They're going to hide him in the bullpen all season. And he's a guy that, when you start talking about future rotation, that's a guy that has the stuff and the arm to be in the rotation. And that's something that I'm going to look at for the season. As far as negatives go, you said I was wrong about Baylor, or I was right about Baylor. I'm not looking good on this, but I will say it's only 4 games. But I thought the Pirates center field spot was going to be okay. Boy, they stink this year so far. 1 out of 16. Anthony and Fowler. Alfred Anthony looks completely. Anthony Alfred looks completely overmatched.
Yeah.
And Gregory Polanco just continues to be bad. Bad's being polite.
He's an albatross out there.
Yeah, he's just getting trotted out there. And the worst part about it is he's just not even making contact with the ball. And this is going to become an issue here. It's 4 games into the season.
I will tell you, Mike, I had him on the post-game show last night. Mike Persak, who covers the Pirates for the PG, he said that from what he's reading out there with the tea leaves, that because there's nobody that he's really taking playing time from, there's nobody that's missing out on playing time by Polanco really being in there that they love, he would not be shocked if Polanco's in there much longer of a period of time because apparently there's a 3-tier system to fix his swing altogether, despite him hitting a little bit better toward the end of last year, this year in spring training. And he's only on phase 2, according to the hitting coach. So they want him to at least get to 3 and then see what happens after 3. It could be another month of seeing Polanco like this based on what I'm hearing from Mike. And obviously he could be wrong. I don't know either. But Lord, 0.70. By the way, this is a stat. He's hitting 0.71 on the season right now. 0.71. At some point, you got to cut the cord.
Yeah.
So you might see this a little bit longer.
But he strikes. He's just.
Yeah.
I would be okay. I wouldn't even be okay with it. But if he was making contact and at least
Right.
making contact with the ball, he's not even seeing the ball, not
No.
having any loud foul balls. He's just completely swinging. And when you have an outfield that 2/3 of your outfield is giving nothing to you with center field and right field,
Right.
that just makes it tough. And, as the Pirates' luck goes, they hit 3 home runs last night and they're all solo. So,
Right.
instead of having a couple guys on base or whatever, they get 3 solo home runs. Good thing is Colin Moran's hitting, but nothing has happened to this point aside from maybe what's going on in center field has surprised me. They're 1-3.
Right.
They're going to struggle to score runs. Their starting pitching is going to be, hit and miss, and their bullpen is going to be fine. They're just, they are what they are.
They are what they are. That's the word. The only thing that maybe surprised me is Evans hitting as well as he's been, and we'll see if that keeps him in the lineup, because the reports are maybe he's maybe secured himself despite a small sample size. Colin Moran, he's a bopper. He's not an average guy, but maybe if he can hit through a full season and jack 25 homers, he's the best power option they have right now. Only surprises so far, but yeah, it's been same old story, and they are what they are. I think that's really it. That'll do it for this morning's edition here, mic'd up on Pittsburgh Sports Live and PSN. Again, thanks to Martin Lawn Services. Hit Doug up at 412-849-5894. Have a good day, and check out all the sites for the rest of your coverage. You never know when something's going to drop, as that's kind of been the story the last few weeks, to say the very least. All right, thanks.
All right, Mike, thanks for getting up.